Hello.
Hey Scott.
Hmm. Yeah, good to see you.
How's your weekend, Scott?
Thanks for asking. It's been super busy week at work. I was having trouble finding time this week just to do about anything.
Yeah.
It's been exhausting. So don't tell no one, but I think I'm gonna kind of phone it in tomorrow and just have a nice like relaxing day.
Oh, good.
Balance it out. How about you? How's your week been?
To be
Oh, and
honest,
I think your audio is breaking up a little bit. Like the sensitivity might be set a little too high. The activation threshold. Oh, what? We lost Theo.
gotta
Hey,
love mobile, huh?
I'm glad you came back. I was like, oh my gosh.
Nah, it's just like I have to rejoin every time it does that, so every time someone notices it.
Oh, that's good to know. I was thinking about starting to use mobile, so it sounds like the audio can be buggy.
It just bugs out like as you're longer on the app, it seems, or something, or on an event or world.
Yeah, like the audio like loses its sync or something over time. It's probably
Yeah,
got a
yeah.
maker.
Yeah, but my week my week's kind of been pretty fucking awful.
Wow, my gosh, I'm sorry to hear it. Yeah, I
I
can't
just
say
kind
it's been
of
awful. It's just
I just lashed out on my mom and had a big argument on Tuesday.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that you
Like
know,
it's at least it's been the days where like there's some space now with it at least, like for the both of us, but I'm just still processing and I'm
yeah,
also
I hope it's
realizing as well.
clear a little.
Yeah, well, and I'm just now more realizing she says more apologies to the dog than she does to me.
I was just gonna mention, yeah, don't forget, like, no matter what, the dog's on both your sides. So
Yeah,
maybe the dog can be a bridge.
yeah,
I'm sorry, that sounds really hard. It sounds like a lot of communication difficulties and
yep.
yeah, parents. I want to welcome in Jimmy. It's so good to see you, and I'm loving the new avatar. That's pretty fresh.
Thanks. Good to be here.
And Bonnie, yeah, glad. Thanks for the Discord message too. Yeah, I was excited. We're getting kind of started again. It has been a long 2 weeks, but got through it and got rewarded with like a really difficult week at work too. So it's just like no rest for the wicked. I'm
Oh
thinking,
well, I hope it gets better.
yeah, thanks. I keep thinking about doing that like a financial event,
Hey
figuring out
Theo,
how to retire. I want to retire.
I was going to say, would it rub salt in the wound to say retirement is wonderful?
No, not at all. I want to hear all about how wonderful retirement is because I want to promote that people should start retiring at like 28.
Hmm.
I think we should work from 18 to 28, including school if that's the route, and then go from there.
For it.
And but yeah, let me go ahead and get started. Sorry, I'm kind of blabbing here, and let's get us started off. So, yeah, welcome to another book review event of The Body Keeps the Score, Chapter 19. Oops. This button. I gotta recall which buttons do what. As always, I love to start out and just say, thanks for setting aside time to come in and review this wonderful book. But, I think I can speak for everyone. It's all about like being together too, like doing it as a group, as a community. That wouldn't be possible if we didn't, actually come together. So, thanks for taking some time out of the evening. I always appreciate it when you're here. And I can't believe that we're on chapter 19 already. It feels like we just started. Doing this. But let's dive in and get ready for the last couple of chapters here. Just a couple of norms to keep the place safe. We don't promote ourselves as any kind of professional therapy. Like we do talk about therapeutic concepts and different ways to approach trauma and a healing path, but nobody's here in like a professional capacity. We aren't professionally equipped to handle like emergencies and stuff. But that said, I do want to hear if any struggles come up that are that deep. Please share if something's going on so that the community can help, direct towards some resources. And yeah, welcome, Hale. I'm so glad that you could make it this week too. Yeah, glad to see you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we were all just checking in and kind of that most of us are having a difficult week, except for KT, who reiterated how wonderful retirement is. Those are my life goals.
Those are cool.
Please no fixing and advising. We don't want to pounce on shares and say, like, I know just the thing for that, because, we do want to leave some room for things that people share to breathe and reflect and ruminate. And if you on the flip side of that, if you do want some feedback, just state that, with your share that you would like to know if anybody's seen this before or has some advice. Had a wonderful example of that in Saying Goodbye on Tuesday night, where one of the attendees said like, hey, this is happening. Like, has anybody had this going on before? And we had a wonderful discussion about it. I and you statement hygiene, that's just that mindful kind of kindness first approach to communication here. We try to promote that since we're talking about sensitive topics, and we do keep things confidential within the sphere of the Bridgemakers YouTube, because we do stream. So please be conscious of that. This is a brave space where we hope to share things that not only help us, but could potentially help others that might, be able to identify. But also, don't admit to any crimes, because then we'd have to go back and wipe the video. We have the hand raise machine over here, our little hand raise squirrel, to keep the conversation going. I hope the hand raise doesn't feel too intimidating. I always love feedback about the World Comfort. I try to prevent, when an event gets like two people kind of going and they sort of start a conversation, and it sort of pigeonholes the conversation like between the two of them. So I like to kind of throw the baton around with the hand raises. And yeah, we always have open discussion on the Discord, and we got Carl chiming in on the Discord too. Thank you for joining us and posting a message that you're there. It's always nice to see people on the streaming side of things too. So let's dive into chapter 19, which is all about neurofeedback. And thought it was really interesting the way the chapter started out, where Dr. Vanderkolk mentioned that our brain is electrochemical. And I sort of stopped and thought about that for a second, that you have kind of these two functions of our consciousness, which is like these chemical reactions, but also like electricity. And he made a really good point that most of our research goes into the pharmaceutical side of medicine, which is the chemical side of the brain and our consciousness. But we also have this like magnetic side of consciousness, where the neurons, have a chemical makeup, but they actually fire electricity between one another. And that's how, our thoughts manifest, and, how we think. But there's very, very little research that goes into the study of like how our brain functions electrically. So I found this to be a super interesting chapter, just diving into that side of the brain function. And our biggest points of understanding currently, of course, is that our brain is made up of neurons, where they connect to each other at a point called a synapse, which is where the electricity sort of flows between neurons. So if you can imagine, a thought is kind of like this electrical signal sort of flowing from one neuron to the next. And, in this combination of like hundreds of thousands, millions of neurons like firing at the same time to form a thought in a specific region of your brain, whether it's processing an image that we're seeing, or a sentence that we're saying, or thinking about what we might want for breakfast tomorrow. These are all electrical signals flowing at immense speeds, from neuron to neuron. And they also have a wave frequency that's measured by hertz. I made sure to look up hertz because I knew Crescent Dawn would be here, and he'd like to dive into that level of detail. But the measurement of the space in between the waves, peak and valley, is called a hertz. And the different like ways, states that our brain operates at have actually different wave frequencies, different signatures for what's going on. So like a gamma wave is like an extreme level of excitement, like agitation or euphoria. Maybe when you bite into one of your favorite chocolate bars or something, that's probably gamma waves coming at you. Or if you just realize how to fix your washing machine that's been bothering you for 6 months. Those are the moments of gamma waves. And then beta is like your problem solving. I like to think of this as kind of like your work self, like when you're parked in your job and you're, going through your motions, you're probably exercising like beta waves. Alpha is like your relaxation. So like you're just kind of chilling, maybe sitting on your back porch, enjoying like a lemonade or an iced tea on a nice day. This could be when your body starts, feeling that alpha wave relaxation, that your brain's just like in a chill mode. And then theta, these are really interesting waves because these are like what happened during REM sleep and, really restorative rest. What's kind of fun about these waves is in this state, your brain function tends to accept really abstract ideas. So this can be when you really can like explore really incredible concepts and, in your dreams, don't always make logical sense thanks to this wave pattern. And psychedelic drugs kind of also like have a component here in the theta wave area, exploring new levels of consciousness and very abstract thought. And then our delta wave is like when you're kind of under, like when you're unconscious and in a really deep rest state. You might have the lowest frequency waves, which are the delta waves. And, these waves, these frequencies, measured in hertz, your brain sections, like the different parts of your brain can have different waves, like at different times. So like the brain doesn't have like a unified state. Like your optical nerves, your optical center might be firing at, gamma if you're watching something really exciting, like a couple of squirrels outside fighting over like who gets the bird feeder right now. And at the same time, maybe you are actually having some theta waves in your frontal cortex because you're actually daydreaming, about something. And, maybe you have the beta waves going on in your speech center because you're talking into the phone or something as you're watching these squirrels. So, just keep in mind that like your different areas of your brain can also have like the different frequencies going on. So it's not like just this unified one single wave that's always, different parts of your brain are going off at different rates at different times. And found this really fascinating. So in 2013, this detection of slower wave prefrontal activity actually became an official biomarker for ADHD. Sorry for the typo there, ADHD, approved by the FDA. So what's important about this slow wave function in the prefrontal cortex, whether it's like neurological or also if you remember at different parts of the chapter, we talked about, unresolved recurring trauma can actually affect your prefrontal cortex function. And the science behind that is you get into the, slower wave forms in that section of the brain. And what happens then is our limbic system jumps in and says, okay, if you're going to take a break, like I'll run the ship. And as we know, the limbic system is like the emotional center of the brain. So if you stop and think about ADHD symptoms, about how it's very reactive and spontaneous and sort of disorganized and unfocused, well, that's the limbic system, right? Like the limbic system has sat in the driver's seat, and that's where all of this kind of emotion is coming from because of the neurological condition that's sort of interrupting the frontal cortex. So that's where neurofeedback comes in, is this idea, this concept that we can train our brain to go into and out of different states by learning to recognize them. And it's very sci-fi. What you see here is some electrodes like kind of connected to the head to get the various wave frequencies that the different sections of the brain are experiencing. And what that does is it synchronizes with something on the view screen, some type of imagery or gamification of your brain waves. And you might have like three little carts where, one cart goes way out in the distance and one cart stays here and one cart's like in the middle. And it's representing like the wave frequencies of three different parts of your brain. Maybe one is like your fear center of the prefrontal cortex. Maybe one's your optical. And then what you can do is as you learn to kind of move your brain through these different frequencies, the carts can align because the frequencies are changing. So it's like practice on how to like move different areas of your brain into different like relaxed or excited states. And these software programs allow you to not only recognize it, but to get visual feedback when you're able to kind of reach this alignment. And there's applied practices for this. One of the examples that Dr. Vanderkolk wrote about in the book was, a young child that was having so much difficulty at school. They were just going from school to school, and the schools were saying, it's too much for me, just super belligerent and, biting people and just being super disruptive. And they did different sessions of neurofeedback therapy where they initially had him draw some pictures of his family, and then you have these kind of stick figures. And throughout the sessions of neurotherapy, he was able to practice and organize his thoughts and his brain state to the degree that he improved like markedly how his family was drawn on the picture there. Much, much more detail and focus and organization. So he was able to start, controlling those emotional reactions to some degree by learning to recognize that brain state and also to stay in a more focused one to, for being able to socialize and connect. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the secret to neurofeedback therapy and what it's all about is learning to recognize like what is the state of my brain, and also practicing moving voluntarily into another state and then being able to recognize that you've changed into another state. And just through a pretty quick control group type of study, they were able to show people, after just a few weeks of neurofeedback training, that they were experiencing alpha waves. They could recognize when they were in an alpha wave state, even without the equipment hooked up. And we have one of the more extreme cases that Dr. Vanderkolk talked about with Lisa. Like many stories in the book, grew up in an extremely violent home with a violent caretaker. Dad left the family and was left with a very violent mom that sort of shoved her into this attic of a living space. And as a result, was spending, almost her whole life in these emergency rooms and mental hospitals, like to the point where they knew her name when she walked in the door. They were like, "Oh, you're here again." Eventually ran away at the age of 12 and got put into child protective services and was made a warden of the state. Eventually started having violent outbursts to such a degree that the dissociation went into multiple identity disorder. And she wasn't having memory, so she would wake up kind of in the emergency room with self wounds and facing all these questions about what happened and saying, I have absolutely no idea, which I don't have any memory of what happened. And so she met Dr. Seaburn, who knew Lisa kind of through these hospital visits and was getting into a neurofeedback therapy practice, and kind of offered Lisa, do you want to try it? Do you want to see if neurotherapy can help? So the focus was on the right frontal lobe, which is the fear center of the brain. This is where we process danger and potential harms. And after just 8 weeks of this neurotherapy, she stopped dissociating like altogether, like these episodes of flipping back and forth into these different personalities. And her life came together to such a degree that she was able to graduate from nursing school at the top of her class. So having that nursing background, she's been able to articulate this experience to a very incredible level of detail. And, she's able to kind of explain like the whole process of how the neurofeedback helped her to recognize that she was in a fear state and to sort of calm down into those like alpha wave states. So the episodes kept decreasing and decreasing to the point where she felt safe enough to function again. So it's all about like this training for this ability to recognize like what's happening in my brain right now. Like, well, how am I feeling? What am I focusing on? Like, what is my mood? And then, how to overcome it, how to sort of steer the ship, through those rapids for better function and mental health and just all around wellness. And this really goes into the areas of PTSD because, as we know, with the traumatic injuries, like especially the complex childhood PTSDs where it's not like an acute occurrence, it's kind of just this reprogramming of your nervous system throughout your whole upbringing to be constantly vigilant and watching out for harmful things and short circuiting our problem solving capabilities because our frontal cortex is really disorganized and our energy's all over the place. So we're kind of stuck in these like delta theta wave shutdown instances, or even like gamma beta. We're stuck in problem solving mode. We're stuck in these like manic states of mind that we aren't able to get out of. And if you remember one of the chapters we went through, we talked about how we kind of evolved at our brain sort of evolved at like two layers. Like we have this kind of old instinctual, like almost animal brain that like our caveman ancestors, our mammalian ancestors kind of had this. Just everything is either food or danger or and you can almost see it in there, like that kind of yellow and green highlighted area. That's like if you go back millions of years, that's like the brain that our ancestors had. And then as we evolved, we got this big like cerebral cortex area where we learned, abstract thought and concepts like time, invented the wheel. But that old animal limbic system brain is like still there, and we're kind of this creature of almost two brains that sort of hand the steering wheel back and forth. So if we end up in a state where our cerebral cortex is compromised, that's all of your focus, your problem solving, your creativity, your sense of time. And if we're constantly flipping into the limbic system, that's our emotional reaction, erratic, hard to hold relationships together, hard to focus and concentrate, difficult to be creative and, all of that. There's also implications in the study of Alzheimer's too. We've learned that the Alzheimer's rhythm of the gamma wave, the gamma frequency, it has a signature for Alzheimer's patients. It's kind of this erratic frequency, rather than the normal ups and downs you would expect from a healthy brain. And they're actually coming up with therapies for the gamma frequency to like enter your body either through light therapy or through sound therapy. And what happens is your brain sort of syncs up with that frequency. So that's the point of the therapy, is like it's giving you like a frequency supplement for your gamma rhythm to follow. And what's important for that is gamma is really important for processing memories. So if your gamma is out of sync, or if you're not experiencing gamma waves, or they're not healthy, it's like you're not really organizing your memories. And as you can see, that's a huge symptom of Alzheimer's. And Another, like maybe lesser known function of gamma waves is when we hit REM sleep, we get a lot of gamma waves because we're having, visual, auditory experiences in our dreams, and it actually triggers this flush of your brain fluid. So there's this clear liquid in our brains. I forget the actual term for it. Want to say something like mycelial, or I'm probably close. But it's like the lubricant that sits between the synapses and lets your neurons fire electricity back and forth. Well, over time, it's like your body needs to flush that out and replenish it. But that process doesn't trigger without these healthy gamma waves that we get in our sleep every night. And what happens is if we don't flush that, then that material becomes like a plaque. Like if you almost think of the calculus kind of plaque that develops on our teeth that the dentist scrapes off, that develops in between your synapses, and it interferes with the electricity firing between the neurons, and that's how Alzheimer's begins to break down our cognitive function. So there's all sorts of new therapies coming out to sort of get our brains into these different frequency levels. And the applications for neurotherapy, neurofeedback therapy are actually pretty broad. We talked a little bit about ADHD. Dr. Vanderkolk also had a example of epilepsy treatment that was written up in the book. PTSD, of course, learning how to recognize that fight or flight state and being able to exit it. Also addiction, smoking, alcohol, drug use, and even learning disabilities. So overcoming, sometimes learning disabilities can be associated with anxiety, but also if you have neurological conditions going on where something's overactive or something's underactive, neurofeedback therapy can help you practice like balancing that, like learning how to enter that state. So here's some of the applications coming to us. You can do neurofeedback at home. Now they have applications you can hook up to a laptop. At the state of the research right now, unfortunately, there's not a lot of insurance programs or Medicare options to try these things out. So it's usually out of pocket. But thanks to personal computing and device prices coming down, like we do have access to this now to do it even in our homes. They're coming out with light therapies for the Alzheimer's frequency that we mentioned, that gamma hertz frequency. And the cool thing about this is like it doesn't even have to really be a therapy. Like you could just put this as your kitchen light, and like every morning when you get breakfast, you get this fresh, dose of healthy gamma wave. And there's lots of channels on YouTube too. I like to throw these on every once in a while when I just need some white noise, but they're frequency videos that, play like a specific frequency through the speakers. And our bodies also respond to that and sort of attune to that specific frequency. And let's see. Simulation, I think maybe crashed and said hello in the Discord chat there. So hello, Simulations. If you're in or out of the world, I don't know, but I appreciate a hi from anywhere. So that's neurofeedback therapy in a nutshell. And I thought our inspiration for the day could be a man who works with his hands is a laborer. A man who works with his hands and his brain is a craftsman. But a man who works with his hands, brain, and heart is an artist. So I thought that was kind of fitting for today's activities. Interesting quote from Louis Nazir. who's actually an attorney. Was a really famous attorney back in the like 1930s in New York. So yeah, with that, let's move into some open discussion. I'm really curious about people's thoughts and reactions on learning about neurotherapy, and we have some questions from simulations up on the board. If you don't necessarily have a reflection, there's lots of little questions there to pick up if one sounds interesting to answer. But I'll clear my name off the hand raise if anyone wants to throw a hand up. But no pressure there. We got some time. And yeah, Crescent Dawn, I'm excited to see your hand up. I'm curious what you think about neurofeedback.
Yeah, here, hang on. There we go. I think my microphone's working.
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear.
Perfect. Taking question number 3 of, like, in my own experience, how aware are you of your internal state? I would say personally very aware, just given, like, past experiences and proper training and stuff like that I've gotten just through life experience. And it's definitely important to, like, keep a note of what mental state I have. Sometimes I might be in a position or in an environment where, like, I'm not showing the right emotional state, and I kind of have to, like, cross-reference myself, and I'm like, okay, am I conveying the right emotion? Am I not conveying the right emotion? Am I fitting, like, the vibe of the given, like, area that I'm in, right, as well? But that being said, like, I usually do a lot of, like, self-regulation. Like, I kind of joke around about it sometimes. Like, I become my own, like, little personal hype man, basically, like, telling myself that things are going to be okay, or just trying to, like, motivate myself in some way, kind of giving myself, like, here's, like, a third person me, basically, that's giving me pointers to real life me in the moment. And it definitely helps kind of solving that problem, like, any given problem that I'm in, especially, like, the way I find it is it's a very, like, self-sufficient way of solving the problem if I'm, if there's not anyone else around to help me with it, of course. And more importantly, if the people that are around me aren't willing to help with that, because there are certain situations where that's just not, not the right time and place for it, of course. But typically that's kind of the way that I respond to things like that. And I find that to work really well. And it kind of helps, like, I guess, given my personality type, it helps interject a little bit of humor into what would otherwise be a negative situation, which is always good to kind of laugh through any struggle, and kind of, it puts a smile on my face, which makes me more confident and makes me want to solve the problem even more. So, But yeah, that's kind of my answer to that.
Oh, interesting. If it's not prying too much, we can kind of jump on over this. But I was curious if you had, like, an anecdote to share about, like, a situation where that might, like, have been, like, a practice you turned to.
Mm-hmm. I guess kind of going off of, like, a real life example. I remember whenever I was really little, and, like, I wasn't exactly the brightest kid, and I struggled to read a lot. And I would always, like, have, like, I guess, third person me constantly trying to, like, I'd be reading the pages, and then I'd have third person me helping me sound out the words, I guess. And then that would help me learn how to read really well. So that's kind of, like, I guess, a good example of it. And the use cases of it.
Yeah, that paints such an awesome picture of it. Like, we kind of only know each other through these, I mean, I'm speaking for all of us, this short window of, like, VR togetherness. And it's like we have all of these, like, decades long backstories. So I'm trying to imagine, like, a point in time where you were having to learn how to learn, like, and, once you did, like, it took off like an Indy 500 car. Yeah. But like, back in the day, you had to kind of invent a process to that. Well, thanks for sharing that. I shouldn't
Mhm.
like awkwardly sort of dive in.
No, you're okay. You're all good.
Please excuse me. Excuse me for that.
You're all good.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah, beautiful share. And yeah, it looks like we got Heyu up on the screen, and let me send the Jumbotron over to you if that feels all right. If not, I'll put it back on me. I got no problems with that.
Yeah, thank you for this. I think one of the questions that caught my eye is how does this challenge traditional narrative of talking it out to heal? For me, I take this as a bit validated on the course of study that I had chosen in grad school on Gestalt therapy theory, which is very humanistic and trusting that we're all doing our best to heal ourselves. And so the whole goal in Gestalt therapy is to mirror the client in a way that doesn't put them off, but it's like the therapist is modeling that third self that Crescent had mentoring him. And so there's a type of like resonating, and I almost think about it like tones. When I used to work with people, sometimes for years, I could kind of, they weren't just absorbing me as that third person. I was also absorbing them, and I could sometimes flip into the language and the coding of talking to them while talking to somebody else. And sometimes that was really useful, and sometimes it was like, wait, what just happened? But I think that talking it out is, before we had the fancy technology and machines, is a way that we teach each other how to self-regulate. And if we have a therapist that is sitting there and, looking at their watch and giving us surveys until we can't, make a choice anymore, which is your average Kaiser Permanente or large, health insurance systems they will make you fill out assessment stuff for 15 to 20 minutes of your session, and then you have 10 to 15 minutes to actually talk anything through. It's very problem and resource focused. So the goal for those sessions is by the end of just one session, you don't need therapy anymore of sorts. And nobody says that. But even if you're like, no, I want to do this again because you're in that much pain, and I say you, and I mean me, I tried to go through this in grad school and was like, you make me ashamed to want to ever do this practice, right? So like what ends up happening is the mental health system is so overtaxed. You don't get to see a therapist for sometimes months. And so in between sessions, by the way, so even if you do wait that long and see one, you still won't get to see them more than once every other month or whatever, unless you are really, really at risk of hurting yourself. And this is average, and that is technically higher privilege and access than most people have. And it's so unhelpful, but it in a weird way, it kind of tourniquets that sense of trying to get help, because if that's help, no thank you, I hear a lot of people say, and then they never even try to find a different kind of therapy or realize that that's not therapy. That's fixing and problem solving. So I don't think it does challenge it. I think it's just a different way to learn how to self-regulate, this neurofeedback piece. And for some people who have been really, really messed up by trying to talk it all out with family members or anybody else, this could be an incredible adjacent access point to grow relationship with their own body and their own, it's kind of, I teach emotional fluency, right? And so I'm teaching people how to recognize their emotions through their body sensations as a first flag, and through the metaphors their brain might be conjuring up. And I think this is a more technical way to do that to some degree, but it also doesn't, as far as what I've heard and seen, it doesn't necessarily like teach somebody how to catalyze uncomfortable emotions and recognize the stories attached to them and where they come from, and build a new story out of all the old stories. So I think this has limitations to it, but it still is probably a really, I think this would have been so much more useful in those, more systematized, overtaxed systems. I don't think it replaces therapy at all, but I think it's a good oasis to try to build relationship with self. And if I was going to nudge at Crescent at all, I also had an experience like that growing up, having dyslexia and not being in any kind of system that would diagnose it. And so I had to tell myself little stories for each letter, each number, each letter had a story attached to it that was like, each letter was a pathway, and I would tell myself the story of the pathway, and then I would be able to replicate that letter. But that was so much work. And I had to coach myself, and I didn't even know I was doing it. I was missing the voice in my family system that knew how to reach me. And so I had to reach me very, very young in my life. And then that evolved. Like eventually I started, it was kind of weird, and this may sound bizarre, but I would feel like future versions of me started to come back and visit me in hard moments. And that was a whole other way to kind of like access a trust of really hard moments, because there would be something unfamiliar about this me that was coaching me, and it would disappear. And so there was this sense of like, oh, I don't understand all of what's happening right now. Maybe someday I will, which means I probably survived this moment, because this is different. This is new, somewhat confusing at times. But then, it definitely created a very diverse inner world, let's just say. But I think the neurofeedback part is, can you imagine when we figure out how to do intestinal feedback, and we're tracking, like, the intestines have massive amounts of neurons, and the heart also has its own kind of adjacent cells that are very neuron-like. So we're just listening to one part of the body and going, this seems useful. What happens when we start to listen to multiple parts of the body and really tune in? Maybe the intestinal feedback will be the emotional fluency tracking. Really listening to your gut at a whole other level.
Yeah, that's a really good application to add to that list that we had there was digestion, right? Like we have so much neurological like information in our guts and in our heart, and like the the research dollars that we could gain so much incredible information from, like they're sort of on the horizon, right? Like we're still in this like pharmaceutical cash cow world. And I thought you brought up a good point too, that how neurofeedback therapy is aimed at like getting productive, right? Like being the productive citizen. It's like, how do you get away from that icky stuff that you're stuck in? But it doesn't include, to your point, like the going back, like what was that icky stuff, and why did it happen? And yeah, I find it super interesting that the book sort of brought back to me this idea that talk therapy is not like the only tool, to like bring out the thing that happened and set it on the table and like smear it on your face and like, what does it look like in the mirror? But to just understand the body, that yeah, things happened and they're really important to talk about and understand. But also, I have this emergency where my body keeps flipping into this dysfunctional state. So like these practices of like how do I sort of enter that alpha relaxed state? But once you're there, like don't shun like your whole past self. Like, don't become a new person and forget like what you've been through. Like it's important to bring that with you and be the person that person needed. When you were describing the personal experiences, it almost like felt to me like time sort of became fluid, and it's like you bookmarked like certain points in your life, and it was like at some point my future self is going to come back to here and explain, but like while you were that person, like that future person was already coming. Like like I loved that. Like that's really a beautiful way to describe it.
Yeah, it that one trick of sorts that I didn't happen without me really engineering it. It just kind of evolved. That got me through so many incredibly tough moments. And the trippier part was that there have been moments in my life where all of a sudden I felt pulled back to those memories. And then I had this stage fright, moment of being like, oh, this is the part where I said something useful to this younger me. Like, what did I say? And do I have the wisdom I thought I would have for this place? And there was just this learning that evolved beyond the moment and kind of held it in a bigger picture of what identity is. Even, am I me now and I wasn't me then? Or will I be the most me I'm ever going to be 10 years from now? Or is all of those me's the sum total of me? And expanding that awareness of what me is, at least made a lot more compassion for myself and made me increasingly interested in building very conscious, intentional relationship with me and my body. So, yeah, but I appreciate what you're saying about coming back, especially because so many of these things, kind of like CBT is the one I probably target the most frequently, often just teach us to kind of bypass all the alarm bells that were going off. And we feel better, so we think it works, but it doesn't actually help us work through the relational dance of conflict better at all. A lot of therapy is focused on changing me, not working and healing us. That's like insurance companies don't even cover family therapy most of the time. And many times, like couples therapy is rarely ever reimbursed. So it shows kind of what a bias we have in the system of like, fix the individual. They're broken. And it stops there.
Yep. Get you just healthy enough to work and pay taxes. And and I if I can entertain the metaphysical too, like that's my disclaimer. I'm getting metaphysical here, but I do truly believe that humanity's future is going to break the fourth dimension. Like I do think that we're going to understand how time and energy like are related and how to actually navigate it. And maybe some of that like happened, maybe like you had a fourth dimensional experience and are, starting the wave. And with that, I'll try not to get any more weird.
I found a doorway. Does anybody else want to? I mean, I will tell you, I have taught quite a few people in my life to do this, and because they asked, and just even there's a lot about the process that does map to like scientific explanations. But I think that the willingness to suspend our frame of what me is and what real is, not to abandon the shared reality we all hold, but the willingness to say, maybe I relate differently and maybe I can access parts of me that other people can't. And And also, how do I reality check that with people around me so I don't go off the deep end, right? So yeah, when you say fourth dimensional, I think it definitely, a lot of people will remark throughout my life of like how different I behave in conflict than what they would expect or what their nervous system tells them to do. And a lot of that has to do with I'm not alone in conflict ever. I always have different versions of me and many people that I've been connected to surrounding me. And that keeps me present and really curious in a way that other people don't arrive at if they feel like the me that I think I am is being threatened and could be extinguished right now. Which is what that kind of primal limbic system kicks in and says.
Yeah, that's a thank you for describing. That's a wonderful personal practice to kind of summon our different, versions of ourselves throughout time and be like, which point in time is like my right person to be here for this. I love that idea.
There's a movie. Sorry, there's a movie scene that represents this that I want to say, but also with the caveat of I don't get to reference this very often anymore because of the whole cancel culture piece that is very valid around the Harry Potter series. But when Harry Potter is almost killed, or we think he's dead, and he has his whole support system that has died or disappeared surrounding him. And it's kind of like a half point break where they tell him all the things his soul needs to hear to come back to his body. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, now I have evidence. This is a thing you can do. And then J.K. Rowling went off the deep end and didn't communicate with her inner selves, obviously. And so, but the scene is still very powerful in recognizing, like, we don't have to wait until we're dead to connect to those parts. We can actually, just go to the bathroom, It's less glorious, but, if you're not fighting Voldemort, take micro moments to connect into these messages that we need to hear and see what happens.
Nice. Yeah, that was one of the questions that I was posting in the epistemology page was, can you separate the art from the artist? I feel like that's a really good example right there. Those beautiful moments, they came from someone who hasn't met their ideal self to bring them through all that stuff yet.
Well put.
Yeah, thanks. Let me see who we got on the board here. We got KT Phoenix up next. Let me throw the microphone over to, or the Jumbotron over to you. Yeah. Curious to what your thoughts are on anything on the board or anything neuro feedback or anything at all, really.
I thought I'd share an experience that I had in a sleep study. I've had several of them in hospital sleep studies, and they wire you up and they map your brain. Essentially, they collect a lot of brain waves and breath and things like that. And when I was going over the results with the sleep doctor, I said, well, one of the things we've noticed is that you're having alpha wave intrusion into your delta wave sleep. And if you want to put that slide back up from near the start, and in reading up on this sort of thing, I discovered that a lot of people with fibromyalgia have this problem where they have the alpha wave intrusion on the delta wave sleep. And they said they thought it was probably pain rousing the person up out of delta wave and bringing them closer to consciousness. But in my viewpoint, what I told them is I didn't think I was asleep at all. I think I was in a deep meditative state. I was accepting the situation. It's hard to sleep with a band around your chest and all your head all wired up and oxygen meter on your finger and all of that. And I said, I don't think I was really even in stage 1 sleep. I think I was just meditating, and you were assuming that I,
Mm.
was asleep. And I just thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, the sleep study paradox for me is like we're gonna measure how well you're sleeping, and then they put all these contraptions on you.
Exactly.
It's like I
Exactly.
never really understood the process of that. It's like, they really need to have some just little sticker or something you can put on yourself when you sleep. Maybe some
Mhm.
research dollars there. But also, thanks for making the connection to meditation too. I don't think we talked about it a lot in the slides. How meditation is sort of like the purposeful practice of entering like alpha and theta, and gosh,
Mhm.
a real high level, I guess even delta states of consciousness. But I had never thought about it before when I was reading the book about, how there's a lot of advocacy for really finding silence and stillness. Like I like to meditate with like a frequency or something playing. Um,
Mhm.
but I got to thinking to myself that frequency is got like a part of my brain active, So like even if I'm in that alpha theta state mostly, like I still have a part of my brain going off. So like to really get into the stillness of all of your components kind of coming into that relaxation state, I might try that. I might, actually try just a silence meditation.
I will add that when you're in Delta, you reach the deepest level, like stage 4 of sleep. And that's when the growth hormones come out, all the healing stuff comes out. That's also where the brain washes itself. Literally, there's spinal fluid going through the brain and cleaning out any toxins or amyloid plaques and things like that. And if you never get to stage 4 sleep, then, you're missing these opportunities for healing. And a lot of people that have trouble with sleep are in that boat, and they never recorded any stage 4 sleep in any of the studies I was in. I'm not saying I'm never in that, but I'm just saying that I think the um, situation kind of kept us from getting that far asleep, with all that gear on you and people watching you and coming in and checking on you and maybe coming in and having you wake up and put on a CPAP machine and adjusting pressure and all kinds of weird stuff's going on. So it's hard to, deeply relax into it. But it's an important feature of sleep.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many restorative aspects of our body that are dependent on like a full like sleep cycle. And if you're lucky and you can just dive into those delta states, straight away, like I think I need like the whole night. And my wife has caught me in the last couple of months. Like I've started having trouble breathing at night, and I started taking some allergy pills, like an Allegra, and like all of a sudden I'm like getting like rested, and I'm having like these vivid dreams and stuff. So like I was like my breathing was getting interrupted, and I think I was missing those different cycles of sleep. And I can personally testify that it really affects your focus and your quality of life. So it's really worth thinking these things over and putting things into practice. If so, yeah, kudos for getting a sleep study. As much as they don't make any sense. Let's see, you got Theo up next. I'm gonna send the camera over to your wonderful avatar there. So yeah, let's hear what came up for you, Theo.
So I a part of me is just so overwhelmed a little bit too, since this is my first session attending and discussing these topics and interest. I think the neuro forgetting the name again, the neuro therapy. It sounds very interesting. Where I sort of wonder about like Um, like I sort of just kind of wonder about like how what it breaks apart with when it comes to like these sort of low I'm sorry, my words, like I'm just caught on so many things right now. I think what was interesting though is the what was said about gamma waves are sort of therapy for Alzheimer's though, because I thought that was kind of like an interesting like sort of thing with like the memory space, because something that I need to work with is there was a book recommended called The Art of Memory, and sort of that sort of thing are practices of like being able to do mental practices to help shape the brain, to regulate and fix all these things, which I think neurotherapy actually does help with. But I was thinking about sort of that comment as well with the whole sort of speculation of what was mentioned with psychedelics. I kind of have a curious connection and thought process that I kind of think that it's actually enacting all of the wavelengths of the brain all at once, because one thing I like consider when it comes to like certain experiences of psilocybin or other psychedelics, that usually those are I noticed this internally, and I still need to research into this more, that your heart is sort of in this like deep rested state. Like it's sort of like kind of like going between alert and asleep in a sort of interesting way, because depending on dose, it actually like seems to be doing a lot of different things at once, rather than, because some moments, at least what I recognize is, if there is no like understanding that you're attuned to the frequencies, and is being like extended, then the whole system kind of starts to regulate more like drastically into those waves, and sort of sporadically, or sort of like eternally, because that's also another aspect of what those experiences can have, is that you ultimately like over obsess, loop, and create like difficult you're not able to recognize yourself out of what you're obsessing or noticing of your attention. And it's very interesting because meditation, I think, does the same thing in some way, because meditation isn't that alarmed synchronization of all the waves. It's the transition to each wave, because I would think it is probably related to one of those waves. But what I noticed the most is meditation also can create. There was this one practice I did with one of my friends last night. I can check for the name again, but basically it's a visualization technique where you meditate on an object and you visualize it into your imagination sphere. And so meditation like is not just only like reducing and completely, and because even you mentioned frequency, meditating with frequencies as well. So it also doesn't only deconstruct, but constructs a sort of thought pattern or ideas that that sort of go higher or lower on these waves.
Wow, yeah, wonderful feedback on the kind of bringing it all together with the concept of having sort of like multiple waves interacting with one another. And I liked your comment about the transition too, like between waves, how that can sort of be an experience. Yeah, that visualization technique sounds really fascinating too, like kind of bringing something into your imagination sphere as you described it.
The way the way it works, and then I'm getting the name right now, is that it's a way of allowing yourself to use your imagination to store memory of objects.
Oh, memory palaces? Yeah, I used that quite a bit.
The name was called Antaranga Tarataka is the technique.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. I wonder if it's very similar to the memory palace concept. Like could be a cousin or even just a secondary term. Yeah, but that's interesting. So like you get an image of an object, and do you kind of like close your eyes and then sort of try to commit that to an imaginatory like version of it?
So what happens is it's like the way I noticed it as a first timer, and I'll probably try more of it because it seems like a very good exercise to work with the brain for imagination and holding memory, is that it's almost similar in the aspect of after images. So what it is you hold an after image of the object, and your mind makes an after image as sort of a shadow or a color or a sort of way that it portrays holding the memory of it.
Oh, nice. I was just at a museum of illusions in North Carolina a couple of weeks ago, and there was lots of after image type illusions. I'll have to send you the address if you have something like that nearby. There's lots of like little like pictorials and different tricks of light that sort of create these amazing images or images that sort of fade like out of your view when you look at them for long enough.
Yeah, because I've also heard one of my friends once, before I knew about this technique, using the circle of life as a visualization meditation. Which the circle of life is a pattern which is intertwined of many polygon sort of patterns and lines that you sort of, if you're able to, the way I can imagine is it's a practice to hold even deeper detail to your imagination or more objects.
Oh, great. Yeah, let us know how it continues to go, because, yeah, I know that's been something of interest to you, is like exploring ways to like improve memory and things like that. So, yeah, interested to hear more, like how it goes. And yeah, Kristen, I see you back up on the board there too. Did another thing come up for you?
Yeah, I was kind of interested by what Heiyu was talking about like a future self kind of reaching back into like the past self for advice. And I guess it's kind of, not that it's like the most scientific way to approach it, but it's definitely an interesting perspective. So in real life, let's say like I'm flying a fighter jet, for example, and I break the sound barrier, I'm basically punching through, I guess, a physical limitation, and I'm going faster than that limitation, and then there's like aftershocks that are left behind on it. And, you know, if something's approaching at the speed of light, then, you know, you see the thing, but then afterwards you kind of hear it in the background. And very similar to what like Heiyu was talking about, like sometimes I kind of use the same approach as well. Like if I'm designing something, or if I'm building something, or just otherwise working on something that I genuinely don't know what I'm doing, I usually like kind of like, I'll take my brain and I'll like split it, I'll divvy it up into like multiple different like me's basically, and I have like the council of me that's like timeline A, timeline B, timeline C, and then they're all like working on parallel like, I guess, solutions, but with different variables involved. And then, you know, as they begin to, you know, I guess go through the timeline, usually the first option never works. Usually like timeline A, B, and C don't work, but usually like D kind of has an interesting variable embedded into it. And I think kind of an interesting way of looking at it is like, I guess almost like you're like superliminally giving yourself advice. Is an interesting way of looking at it. Like I guess you're kind of like you're breaking through that limitation, right? Similar to like breaking through the sound barrier, for example. Like you're kind of punching through, I guess, otherwise normal, or I guess not normal, but like you're punching through limitations, and then you're kind of assisting yourself with what you're doing. And I find that really fascinating, really interesting. And I guess kind of I can definitely relate to that as well. Of like I do that a lot as well. So I just thought it was really interesting.
Yay. I
Wow.
heard parts of that.
Yeah,
I'll make sure to make more drawings of it.
Oh.
And
It reminds me of the qubits, like the superposition and being able to send like some type of function through, and like it goes through all of its like possibilities like at once, and then kind of comes back with the most probable that in this case you ask it a question, right? So it like comes back with like the answer to the most optimized version of that. Like I at the risk of sounding weird, I really do believe in these kinds of things, that we have the ability to tap into it. I think it's at the edge of our subconscious, like where we're at. But if you've ever heard of the movie called Arrival, I wonder if you've probably seen that. Like I love that. That's my favorite. Like time is fluid movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have quite a few, but that one is like, it's the one at the top, that I would put on the top shelf.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
Huh.
and I think that there's an awakening, and that maybe it's hundreds of thousands of years from now, but I can visualize it. I trust it's true, and I guess that's faith, But,
yeah.
so I really love it, and kind of thanks for being so articulate with it too, because I really believe that there's people that might come across the video and be like, I'm no longer alone.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And how productive too. I mean, don't let corporate America hear this. Like, I'm gonna maybe put this behind a firewall, because they'll be like, oh, like we can train people to do it? Like, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely got the mentality from just like years of engineering, and like I was at that weird transitional age of like computers are new-ish and they're starting to get used, but they're not quite validated yet. So a lot of like our work was basically we had to do everything mentally, even though we could do it on a computer. Like we had to validate it mentally. So what that would turn into is basically just engineering turned into you are now your own engineering council, and you're just going to have to like learn how to fracture your brain into multiple U's to do that, to work efficiently. Otherwise you don't get the job. So yeah.
Parallel processing.
Yeah.
I'm so curious. I know you're always kind of like a victim of my questions, and you're really kind about it, but you don't have to answer. Like I hope you trust that we can always just move on. I'm just curious in knowing your sleep schedule, like what your thoughts are about like the theta and delta wave like entry for like sleep, like restorative sleep. Do you experience like really deep sleep even though you sleep for a shorter period?
Sometimes, yeah. Like more recently, I've actually started adopting a more like normalized sleep schedule again, just kind of spontaneously. But whenever I was like younger, especially given like past childhood conditions and environments that I was in, which weren't great by any stretch, I was constantly basically flip-flopping every 10 minutes between gamma and delta at the same time. If you've ever seen the way like dolphins sleep, for example, where they basically just shut off half the brain, let that part rest while they're still carrying on with their motor functions, and then they activate that part of the brain and switch off the other part, and they just cycle between the two. That's very similar to like what I used to do when I was younger. So like for context, whenever I was about like 13, I would wake up, go to college, and then I would start working. I'd come home, I'd work my first job, and then I'd come back home, clean myself off, work my second job, go to sleep for about like 4 hours, and then wake back up and then go to college again, right? And that was like the cycle for a really long period of my life. And I never really got a whole lot of deep sleep out of it. However, the sleep that I would get was very like refreshing, and it, even though it didn't last a very long time, like my body never felt drained out of it or anything like that. But just given the constant like need to cycle between like I need to be on high alert, but at the same time I need to sleep, and then so you just flip flop between the two rapidly, and you hope you don't miss anything whenever you're in a deep sleep cycle. You know, that's kind of how that panned out for me as a kid until very recently, where I actually started adopting a more normalized sleep schedule.
Oh gosh, yeah, that reminds me of times at work where I would close one eye and be like, "Does this count as being half asleep?"
Yeah.
My friend, my roommate, my dear friend that I went to college with, like he could sleep like a light switch. Like it was, you know, he was like fully awake, and then he jumped in bed and his head hit the pillow, and he was like dreaming already. I'd never seen anything like it. Like when I go to sleep, it's like a process, you know, like I have to sort of go through all of the little levels of awareness until I'm finally sleeping. And so yeah, I just always find it fascinating, like how people have different ways of getting to bed. And yeah, so thanks for sharing. Yeah.
Yeah, of
Really
course,
cool.
of course.
Yeah, I'll have to look more into that too, about how dolphins sleep. And,
Yeah, pretty
yeah,
fascinating.
KT, I see a hand raise on the board too. Did something come up?
Yeah, remember we've talked before about your subconscious or back brain working on a problem? You know, when you look at something else, I think that's a similar case. And I'm reminded of the time when I was in school and was taking an assembly language class. And I had a bug in my program and I could not find it. And so I said, to heck with this. And I went home and had supper and did something or other, the usual evening stuff, and went to sleep. But in my sleep, I dreamed all night long of fixing other people's bugs in their assembly language code. Not mine, not my particular problem, but I was helping them fix theirs. And then the next morning, on my drive back to school, the solution popped into my head complete. You know, and as soon as I parked, I jumped and ran and changed, I'm dating myself here, but changed the punch cards, and it ran perfectly. And so I know part of my brain, you know, was working on that I was not as consciously aware of it, but it certainly was. So we have different ways to split up, you know, that parallel processing.
That's so wild. And that's been something I've been trying to practice a lot lately too, is like instead of being frustrated with something, like just trusting that my future self is going to find like a solution to it. Like it's not worth like stressing out right now, because I know, you know, tomorrow or 2 days from now, like it's going to just come to us like that. Like, so yeah, thanks for sort of bringing that. I think that is something that can be put into practice, is like you just trust yourself, you're gonna find it.
When I was teaching programming, I would tell students, when you hit a wall like this, go walk around the block or play some basketball or some racquetball, something to get the physical stress hormones out, but also just to give yourself a break. And it works to do that. That's why so many of the tech companies on the West Coast will put, and other companies will put, play areas inside the work areas where people can play, you know, basketball or Nerf ball or whatever, because they know that it works.
Yeah, and learning that, you know, time is like such a resource that you know, you can sort of lean on, because it's like I can either like burn, you know, the midnight oil and, you know, put the afterburners on to just like power into this problem right now, or I can just trust myself that this just isn't the time where the solution like reveals itself, you know, like we just haven't reached that point in time yet. So like, yeah, And those eureka moments too. I think that's what they talk about with the gamma rays, with the gamma frequency. The feeling of gamma is like that eureka, like where you just finally like land on the solution. I know Einstein talked about that in his famous story when he was working at a patent clerk, and he looked across at
Right.
like the clock tower, and that was what hit him. That time is like relative to your position and your motion in space. Like, yeah, talk about some gamma. Oh, great. Yeah, and things like I always enjoy hearing about your program stories too, because like in the punch card period, uh, in the literal bugs in the machine, I'll never forget that. Well, great. Yeah, I'll take the camera back here, and I don't see any further hand raises, but we got a lot of mileage or kilometerage out of that discussion. So yeah, I'm really glad we got started together again. I definitely missed doing this for the 2 weeks that we took a break. And yeah, I really have no idea what chapter 20 is about. So I'm kind of excited to probably gonna put my headphones on and go for a walk and see what the book closes out with. Yeah, I can't wait to read it, to hear it, and then to get back together and kind of close this experience out. I'm really excited that we did this. So yeah, I hope to see you back again next week, and we'll do
Yay.
chapter 20. Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Scott.
Scott.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Scott.
Thank you.
Scott.
Yeah, good
Have
night.
a good one.
You
Bye.
too. Good night.
Bye.
What
Bye
is
bye.
happening? Mhm.
You had enough,
Hello.
Crescent? Oh, I think you were waving. Hi.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm
my
like, is that a bye or is that a hello?
Yeah, no, I was saying hi.
Can you
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
me?
yeah.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
Weird. I can see everything in the world, but I am